kidding. Although it's a good thing to like serve joy of our peers, whatever. There are benefits to it, good things to it. But I don't know. Sometimes we're busy and it's a little bit inconvenient. So I'll tell you this. I got a jury notice. I know I'm in the middle of a story, but I'm just giving you another story in the story. This is a story within a story, extra bonus. I got a jury notice during, I mean, we're still in the pandemic, but like in middle of, I want to say May. And I'm thinking, am I going down to the courthouse? So I called that number. You know, you call that number like 24 hours in advance or something? Call the hotline. And they're like, oh, anyone with notices, it's just everyone's automatically off the hook. I'm like, okay. Anyway, getting back to the story. So they called this Jewish woman in for, not much of a story there. But anyway, they called a Jewish woman in, a Jewish mother in for jury duty. And they interviewed her and eventually they let her go. You know the reason why? Why? Because she insisted the whole time that she was guilty.
Absolutely.
Come on, guys. That's a decent joke right there. That's a decent joke. I'm just saying.
I have to unmute so I can groan.
All right, fine. Sorry, then I apologize. Look, it's Yom Kippur is coming up. I have to have something to like to repent for. So let it be that joke. All right. So here's the deal. The premise of our series is we're exploring what we're calling negative emotions. Not just worry. I know it's called Worrier to Worrier, but it's about encountering and taking on all sorts of negative emotions and trying to flip them toward the positive, or at least try to minimize the negativity and the damage that can cause. And as I explained in the first session and reiterated last week in the second session, the primary, at least according to Jewish thought, one of the primary problems with negative emotions, it's not that it makes us feel bad, because we'll get over that. But or whatever, it is what it is. But it's that negative emotions sap our energy. They make us not want to get out of bed. They make us not want to be productive. And honestly, that's not the way we're meant to be living our lives. We need to be productive. We need to be accomplishing things. And when I say productive, I don't mean only in the way that secular society views productivity, which is like how much money are you earning and what kind of job do you have and status in society and what kind of car do you drive and what kind of home do you live in and who cuts your lawn. I don't mean exactly that. What I mean is, just even productivity in a spiritual sense, doing the good deeds that we all can do. We can't do them, or we're not going to do them, if we're busy feeling bad about ourselves. So the premise of this course is, first thing we need to do is make sure that we're approaching life from a space of positivity, from a space of openness. Because without that, it's difficult to get the job done, to be an effective spiritual warrior and light maker on earth, if we're busy fretting over various things. So last week we looked at shame. And we explained that shame is different than guilt. Today's topic is guilt, by the way, if you didn't notice from the joke. We explained last week shame is different than guilt, at least in our definition, in that shame is feeling bad about ourselves, whereas guilt is feeling bad about something we've done. Or let me say it the other way around. Guilt is a sense of feeling bad about something we've done, whereas shame is feeling bad about who we are. It's a self-judgment. It's not like I did something wrong. It's not I did something wrong. It's I did something wrong, which implies there's something wrong with me. It's a self-judgment. And we said last week that to address that, we have a very easy tool, or a very easy method. And that is, you just discovered that you might not be perfect inside. You discovered some flaws. Mazel tov. Welcome to the world. You're a human being. Great. Welcome to the club. You're not perfect. That's exactly the way you're meant to be. And when I say you, I mean me, right? We're not perfect. Fantastic. Now, doesn't mean that we have free pass to do whatever we want because we're not perfect. No. The task of the human being is to the best of our abilities, repress, and I know that may be a dirty word, but repress the negative instincts and do the right thing nonetheless. But the fact that we have the negative instincts shouldn't make us feel bad. That's just adding an emotional layer on top of an already decent challenge. Let me explain that again. I know we did this last week, but I just want to make sure we have a running start into our topic. Look, the challenge of dealing with our inner stuff is strong enough. That's a big enough challenge that we don't need to compound it with feeling bad about the fact that we have that inner stuff to deal with. Are you with me? Yes? There's dealing with the stuff and then feeling bad about the fact that we have to deal with the stuff. That makes dealing with the stuff that much more difficult. So your kid spills, is pouring the milk into the cereal bowl. Yeah? Little kid. What happens? You guys can fill in the rest of the story. Little kid holding the big bottle of milk, trying to pour into the cereal bowl. Help me out here. What happens?
It spills all over the place.
It spills all over the place, right? It happens all the time. Listen, not that I'm speaking from personal experience, but nonetheless, it might happen once in a while. I've heard, rumor has it that it might happen. So, there's two different approaches. One is, all right, let's clean it up. Another approach is, why'd you spill it? What were you thinking? You gotta be more careful. What do you think is healthier? Right? I'm not saying what's more instinctive or less instinctive. That's not what I asked. What's healthier? It's healthier. Now, you might say, okay, I know it's healthy, but in the moment I'm getting all uptight, I'm getting all upset, I'm getting all annoyed. All right, because you're human. Good. Take a deep breath and guide your child through the cleaning up process. And you've taught a lesson. You've taught a lesson about how to clean up. You've also taught a lesson about how to respond to crisis with a calm manner, even if inside you're not so calm. I'll ask you a question. This is a raise of hand question. Okay? Do you believe, and if you believe, yes, you raise your hand. Do you believe that human beings have the power, have the ability to feel an emotion and yet behave contrary to that emotion? Do you believe so? Yeah. You can feel anxious inside and speak calmly. You can feel a little bit, pulled in different directions inside, and you can smile at the person. Yeah? By the way, I'm not saying you should smile at everybody, although it's a good start. Yeah, I'm not getting into specific scenarios. Your mileage may vary as you apply these concepts, but the core idea is that you and I have the ability to override our natural instincts or override our natural emotions inside, and we do that more effectively when we're not caught up in the fact that we have those emotions in the first place. If we're judging ourselves, what kind of mother am I? What kind of father am I? The first response to my kids is that negative response. Oy vey, I'm a terrible parent. If that's my response, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then I've defined myself as a negative parent. I've defined myself as a flawed human. Define myself in a negative way, and that's going to make it that much harder to deal with it. What the healthier approach, as we explained last week, is take it easy. I know that I'm not perfect. Am I instinct, right? To shout and yell or to get upset and get annoyed? Yeah, because I'm human. Wonderful. God gave me a godly soul. God also gave me a lower instinctual soul. God gave me an animal soul or a natural soul that's very instinctive by nature. So yeah, instinctively I'm going to have a negative response. Fine. I'm not going to get caught up in that. I know what the right thing to do is. So again, what paves the path to make it easier to act in a healthier fashion is by not getting caught up in the fact that we have a force inside that pushes us toward the negative. Feel the negative, know that you're human, and then move on from it and respond in the healthy way. Does that make sense? That was last week. Yes? All right. That's what we call in Torah study a kitzur. Kitzur. It's a Hebrew word. Kitzur means the summary. On to guilt. Today we explore the question, is guilt kosher or not? So many Jewish guilt jokes. So many Jewish guilt movies and books. So much of Jewish guilt that's out there. I know there's other guilt also. There's Catholic guilt. Listen, I can only speak from my perspective, right? Jewish guilt. By the way, I didn't say Jewish guilt. That's another class. Jewish guilt is another class. This is Jewish guilt. So, do you have guilt over guilt? All right, that's another conversation also. But getting back to the core conversation, today we're going to explore the simple question, is guilt healthy or is it unhealthy? Let me give you both sides of the scenario. Oh, and guilt here is defined as feeling bad about something you've done, not about who you are, not about who I am, right? Don't feel bad about who I am. No, I'm kidding. I shouldn't feel bad about who I am, but what if I did something not so good, not so ay. Or maybe it's ay, different ways of saying it, right? Maybe I didn't do something so nice, so positive, so loving, so caring, so attentive. Maybe I hurt someone that I love, God forbid. All right, maybe I said something that was not nice, that was mean. Maybe I reacted in an unhealthy fashion. And now looking back, I feel guilty, I feel bad for what I've done. I don't feel bad about who I am. That was last week and before. I'm feeling bad about what I've done. Is that good or not good? Let's take a poll. Quick poll. Impromptu poll. If I did something wrong and later on I feel bad about it, is that good? Raise your hand if that's good. Yeah? Is that not good? Raise your hand. All right. We have mostly goods, a few not goods. I want to bring you into both sides of the coin. On the one hand, one might say that feeling guilt is a negative emotion. And the nature of negative emotions is to bring us down, as we've explained. So any negative emotion, including guilt, we need to eliminate from our emotional toolbox. It's not healthy because guilt is making us feel guilty. And if we feel guilty, it doesn't feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, then we're not going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So get rid of the guilt. No more guilt. That's one option, one perspective. The other perspective is, one second. So are you saying then, because we don't want to have guilt, negative emotion. So then what's the alternative? You do something wrong, and then no guilt, no remorse. There's a word for that. Sociopath, right? Sociopath is someone who does something wrong and feels no remorse or guilt. So what's going on? So it seems like both approaches are flawed, like fundamentally flawed, like not good options. And I'll tell it to you like we would say it if we were studying Talmud. Buckle up. Ready? I'm going to get the thumb ready. Because you got to use the thumb when you're doing some Talmud. And a certain tone of voice. Ready? If you say, you ready? If you say that you are guilty, you do feel guilty, then you're feeling bad. And feeling bad is not good. It doesn't energize you. But if you say you don't feel guilty, so what kind of person is that does something wrong, doesn't feel guilty? You don't feel bad about it. You do it again. What does it mean, don't feel bad? Sociopathic behavior to not feel bad about something. So what is it? Should we feel guilty or not guilty? This is not shame about ourselves. This is feeling remorse and guilt over what we've done. So if we don't want to be a sociopath, then we probably should feel guilty. But if we feel guilty, then we're still feeling bad. Maybe not about ourselves, but about what we've done. And that seems like it might, once again, keep us tethered and stuck. So what do? Folks, it's been great to join you today. Gotta run. I'm kidding. No, I wouldn't leave you hanging with such a question. Right? Is guilt kosher or not? That's the question of today. We have a lot to explore. We're going to start with a verse from the wonderful King Solomon. He's known as the wisest of all men. I don't know if he was the wisest of all people, right? Could be there were women that were wiser than him, but it says the wisest of all men, at least. All right, so take a look at my screen. I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to try to share my screen with you. Thank you for your patience. We got it. All right. Here we go. Sugazun. Text number 2. Here we go. Text number 2 from the book of Proverbs, Mishlei. It says in Proverbs 14, B'chol etzev yiyeh meiser. Okay, I'll do it in English. In every sadness, there is a benefit. In every sadness, there is a benefit. What does that mean? How do you understand it? How do I understand it? How do we understand it? Here's the deeper understanding according to Jewish mystical thought and spiritual thought. King Solomon doesn't write that sadness is good. He doesn't say that. He says in every sadness there is a benefit, which implies that sadness itself is not positive. But within every sadness there could be a positive utility or a benefit that comes from it. Do you see the difference? Sadness, he says, could yield a positive result, but it itself is not inherently positive. I'm going to give you an example about this in a moment, but I first want to share my screen with you one more time. Well, again, not only one more time, but once again, I want to share my screen with you to look at text number 3 from the book of Tanya, which is our go-to source in this course. Our course source. Tanya chapter 26. In every sadness there is a benefit implies that there is benefit and gain to be derived from negative emotions. But the phraseology actually suggests that negative emotions per se have no virtue, and it is only that a benefit is derived from them. In other words, negative emotions inherently are not good, but they could lead to something positive if utilized in the proper fashion. That is the approach we're going to take today, and to explain this, I'm going to give you an example. Here's an example, and it's a yes or no question. Is taking a sharp knife, like a super sharp knife, holding it to the chest of another human being, cutting their body open and pulling out a vital organ, is that good or not good? Who says it's good? Who says it's not good? Good? No. Not good? We have a lot of hands that are not going up. All right. Too many hand raising questions today. We'll stop at the polls. Good or not good? Yeah? What do you think? Somebody unmute and tell me if they think it's good or not good.
I think it's good. If a doctor does it, it's good.
There we go. So, taking a knife, holding it to someone's chest, cutting their body open, pulling out a vital organ on a back alley for the context of organ trafficking, not good. Or murder, God forbid, not good. In general, not good, right? But if a scalpel is held by a surgeon and it's in a sterile environment and it's done in the right context, with the right patient, with the right conditions, under the right conditions, with the right anesthesia, with the right donor of the new organ, etc., 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 then it could be healthy. Are you with me? So, b'chol etzev yeh meiser. Every sadness could lead to a benefit. Could, the operative word could, might have a benefit, but you have to do it very carefully, because otherwise you're just cutting up a body and pulling out an organ. Otherwise, sadness is simply destructive. So, here's the point. Negative emotions. And today the focus, of course, is on guilt. So let's just call it guilt. Guilt, in and of itself, guilt per se, not good. It's not beneficial. It's not healthy because it's negative. But a negative emotion like guilt, utilized in the proper fashion, done under the proper circumstances, the scalpel of guilt, which could be cutting, emotionally cutting, holding the scalpel of guilt under the right circumstances, by the right person, at the right time, etc., 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 could be beneficial, could be life-saving. Are you with me? So what's the answer? Is guilt kosher or not? No, what's the answer? It depends. Or, if I would ask you the question, is guilt good? The answer is yes. Is guilt not good? What's the answer? Yes. How can both be true? It reminds me of the story with the rabbi. And I know you've all heard it. I'm still going to say it because I have to. I have to. I'm sorry. I cannot say this joke. So, two litigants come to the rabbi's house late at night, two community members, and they're in a dispute. They say, "Rabbi, we need your advice." "Sure," says the rabbi. One guy presents his side of the story, the rabbi says, you're right. The other guy presents his side of the story, the rabbi says, you're right. From the other room, the Rebbitzin, the rabbi's wife, says, how can they both be right? And he says to her, you're also right. Yeah, that's the joke. Okay, I know you've all heard it. Anyway, look, guilt is good? Yes. Guilt is not good? Yes. How can they both be right? Yes. They're both correct. What does it depend on? What does it hinge on? Are you a surgeon or not? Are you doing the guilt? Are you practicing guilt with discretion, with care, with precision, under the right circumstances, in the right context, for the right things? Or are you and I blindly wielding the knife of guilt and just chopping up ourselves? God forbid. God forbid to cause harm. Most of the time, here's a spoiler alert, most of the time, certainly without this class, we've used guilt in a negative fashion. Guilt to hurt ourselves or even others. Today we're going to learn how to carefully hold a scalpel, the scalpel of guilt. By the way, you are not going to get your medical license today. I'm sorry if you came here to become a doctor. You can play a doctor on TV, and that's the most I'm going to give you. You will not get a medical license, but you will get a guilt license. License to guilt. You're going to get a license to guilt today. You're going to learn how to exercise guilt in a healthy fashion and only a constructive fashion. You with me? Yes? So far makes sense? Everyone's with me at where we are right now? Okay. Good. Let's move on. One important thing to mention. Dealing with guilt is super tricky. Because not only are we holding a scalpel that could cause a lot of harm. By the way, let me just take a step back. And this is not in any way a negative about doctors. But it has happened that doctors have caused harm to patients, correct? Yes? It's happened before, right? Okay. So even someone who's trained, even someone who's very highly skilled and trained, and has done it 1,000 times, whenever you're holding something, a dangerous tool, whenever you're cutting open the human body, whenever you're taking out something or putting something in or whatever it is, there's always risk involved. Again, similarly with regards to our own, working with ourselves. It's a complicated and I don't want to use the word scary, but we're dangerous, even though I just literally use those words when I'm saying I don't want to use them, but it's a very, you have to be very careful. Now, this is all compounded by the fact that we have a force inside of us. This is like next level. Imagine you're a surgeon doing the surgery on a roller coaster. Yeah, you with me on this? Do you remember the Saturday Night Live commercial? The one with the car that was doing the bris in the back of a car? You remember that one? There was some sort of car. It's so smooth, mazel tov. Anyway, so imagine a surgery on a roller coaster, right? Where there's something moving and shifting beneath you. That makes it even more difficult. Now, the same thing is true with regards to guilt, because there is a force inside of us that's trying to get us to mess up. And what is that force called? We call that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. There is an evil inclination, a tendency toward negativity within us, or the animal soul, evil inclination, whatever you want to call it, and it tries to make the challenge ever greater. In case the challenge of life is not hard enough, it tries to amplify it. One of the ways to amplify the challenge of life, to do the right thing, to make it more difficult to do the right thing, is by trapping us in a state of guilt, which could keep us in a negative state of mind and heart, and not do the next positive thing. Like, if you feel guilty about something, like, I should have called that person back, I can't believe I didn't, right? I feel so bad about that. You're more likely to continue not to call that person because you feel bad about it. Are you with me on that? Yeah? If you feel bad about something, very likely, or oftentimes, we continue the behavior because we feel bad, and that just kind of feeds itself. So the natural soul and the evil inclination want us to feel guilty for all the wrong reasons. They don't want us to feel kosher guilt. They want us to feel negative guilt. that holds us back from doing the right thing. That's their job, to kind of stack the deck against us. Take a look at this. This is an unbelievable text. This is unbelievable. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. This is text 9. We're going to go back to some of these texts in a little bit, but don't worry, you're in good hands. Text number 9. This is from a Hasidic master, a Jewish mystical rabbi. He says like this: more than the misdeed itself, the evil inclination values the negative emotion that results from the misdeed. It hopes that this negative emotion will lead the person to enter a state of despondency. Look at that. The evil, according to this text, the evil inclination only entices us into sin in order for us to feel bad about it and then lead us to a state of despondency, which then puts us in a negative state of being, which then stops us from doing anything positive. So more than the actual misdeed, the evil inclination values the sadness, the guilt, the negative emotion that results from that. That is unbelievable. It's like the ends and the means, or the means to the end is not the sin. That's a means to the end. The end is the guilt, the negative emotion. So understand this. I said before that feeling guilt, or the experience of guilt is like holding a scalpel and cutting into the body. So we have to know how to hold the knife and how to utilize it, etc. But the challenge is enhanced by the fact that there's a part of us inside that wants to cut. That wants to cut in an unhealthy fashion. Are you with me on this? Our evil inclination wants us to feel bad, wants us to use the scalpel not for healing, but for self-harm. Self-harm. Now, you might ask the question, well, why do we have an evil inclination? That was last week. Because that's by design. God created us in such a way that life has a challenge. Look, we're not going to undo it, so might as well embrace it. But know the truth, that dealing with guilt is compounded by the fact that there's a force inside of us that does not want us to do it in a healthy fashion. So to overcome that and to utilize guilt productively is not just a little challenge, it's a big challenge. And therefore what we learn today, the skills, the tools that we learn today are very important. So now, let's jump in. So how do we make sure that the guilt is good? How do we make sure that the guilt is going to be productive, is going to lead to improving our behavior and not just making us feel bad about what we've done and keep us stuck in the negative behavior? How do we make sure that this is a surgery, a life-saving surgery or a life-giving surgery, and not, God forbid, some sort of procedure in a back alley somewhere, etc.? How do we make sure that it's positive and not negative? Because guilt can go both ways. It can cut both ways. There are 3 factors. And this is the core of today's lesson, these 3 factors. There are 3 conditions that will determine whether the guilt we feel is healthy or, God forbid, the opposite. If any of these 3 factors are not present, the guilt will not be positive. All 3 must be present. It's not like 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3. It's not best of 3. It's all 3 factors must be present in order for the guilt to be kosher. If you notice that you're feeling guilt about something, but it does not satisfy all 3 conditions, then you know it's unhealthy guilt. You got to drop it. Drop the guilt. Let it go. Force yourself to let it go because it's not healthy. You're holding onto a scalpel and it's self-harm at this point. It's not kosher. What are the 3 factors? I know you're all on the edge of your seats. What are the 3 factors? Let's go through them one at a time. Number 1, the first question we must ask ourselves when considering the guilt that we're feeling to determine whether it's kosher or not, beneficial or not, the first question we ask ourselves is, did I do it? Do I own it? Did I intentionally do this, or am I feeling guilty about something that is not my doing? Now you might ask the question, well, who feels bad about something they didn't do? We do, all the time, right? We feel guilty all the time. Had I only known, I would have been there. I didn't know. I feel so guilty. You feel guilty? We can't feel guilty. We should not feel guilty about that. Doesn't mean we don't feel sad or don't feel anything. But guilt for something we did not choose intentionally to do is misplaced guilt. Are you with me on this? I want to give you some examples. I'm going to share my screen once again. We're going to go through different scenarios, and let's do this in an interactive way. I'm going to pull up a chart with various scenarios. Okay, here we go. Exercise 3.2. How appropriate is guilt as a response to the following scenarios? Is it very appropriate, somewhat appropriate, not at all appropriate, or it's complicated? Let's leave it's complicated aside for a second. Let's try to get some clarity here. Okay, scenario number 1. Forgetting a spouse's birthday. Yeah? Is guilt appropriate or not? You forgot your spouse's birthday. Hold on. Unmute yourselves. Appropriate, somewhat, very appropriate, somewhat appropriate, not at all appropriate.
Somewhat appropriate.
Okay. Texting while driving and rear-ending another vehicle.
Appropriate.
Okay. Missing a child's graduation due to a medical emergency.
Not at all appropriate.
By the way, we said, or some of you said not at all appropriate, or one of you at least said well, not at all appropriate, and I agree with that. But how often do we feel guilty about that?
Yes.
We feel guilty about that even though it's not our fault. But we still feel guilty. And the premise of today's session is, you got to let that guilt go. That's a negative scalpel. What about wasting years of life as a result of choosing a dead-end career?
Not appropriate.
Complicated, but if we knew going in and we chose it anyway, okay, that's one thing. But if we thought it was going to lead to something and it didn't, it's out of our control. Eating unhealthily.
Appropriate.
Befriending a person who eventually causes harm, God forbid, to one's family.
Somewhat appropriate.
Can you imagine that guilt? Can you imagine that guilt of this last one? Befriending a person who eventually causes, God forbid, harm to one's family? And I would say that if you had no idea, they demonstrated no signs that they were going to cause harm or that they were a negative person, I would say that it's number 3, not at all appropriate. Even though it might be impossible, it might sound impossible to demand from a human being to let that guilt go, this is what Torah tells us. This is what Judaism tells us. Judaism tells us that if you want to know what's healthy or appropriate guilt and what's not, what's healthy and appropriate is only when, number 1, you own it. If you don't own it, if you're not the owner of it, then it's not healthy to feel it. And what does it mean that you own it? It's if you chose knowingly that negative course of action. Or if you were negligent and you should have known better. So, texting while driving, feel guilty about. Feel guilty. Well, and rear-ending a car. Sorry. Feel guilty about that. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking right generally, right? This is not pointed at anybody specifically. Right? If one texts and drives and rear-ends another vehicle, yes, it's appropriate to feel guilt. If one, what was the other scenario that we had that was a slam dunk? If one is choosing, to disregard one's health, yeah, that's somewhat appropriate. If one forgets the spouse's birthday, on some level, yeah, you should have set a reminder or whatever it is, or should have known. But medical emergency, you miss your child's graduation, don't feel guilty about that. You can make it up with your child and spend quality time with them, but and tell them how much you love them, how much you wanted to be there. But guilt, something out of your control. We joke about Jewish guilt, but it's not a joking matter because guilt is very dangerous when it's dangerous. And when is it misplaced to become dangerous? It's when it does not belong. It's when we did not choose it. A medical emergency and missing something that someone else, is disappointed about is not a source, should not be a source for guilt. Not knowing the future is not a source of guilt. How did I know that this person would turn out to be that person? Right? Somebody gets married to someone. Had no idea who they were or who they would become. No guilt. Don't feel guilty. Someone should not feel guilty about that. So guilt, it's very important. Look, one second. Take a step back. A person can feel whatever they want to feel. But our conversation today is about what's healthy and what's unhealthy. From a Jewish perspective, this would constitute unhealthy guilt. Feeling guilty about something that's not our choosing, intentional, mindful choosing, is not a healthy scenario to feel guilt about. So that's guilt factor number 1, ownership. Ask yourself, when considering guilt, did I choose to do this or not? Did I choose knowingly to do this or not? That's factor number 1. Let me check in with you. Does this make sense so far? Questions, comments?
Somebody has a question on chat.
Oh, I didn't see that. Thank you for letting me know. What does Judaism say about how to let it go? Oh, good. So for that, we need to practice mind control. You're getting very, very sleepy. No, our own self-mind control, which means to be in control of our thoughts. And being in control of our thoughts means that at any moment we can bring up another thought to replace the thought that we have, the negative thought that we might have. We, for some reason, I don't know why, for some reason, human beings and children are not taught this. It's taught in Judaism, especially in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, but it's for some reason it's not taught it's not part of the reading, writing, and arithmetic curriculum in schools. And I don't know if parents always do a great job of teaching their kids this, but it's something that I feel is neglected in education. The notion that we can be in control of our thoughts. It's something that's well discussed in Kabbalah and Judaism, but it's not well discussed in other circles. And I think we do ourselves a disservice to when we believe that we are a victim to our feelings and our thoughts and we cannot change them. How do we let something go? Simple. Stop focusing on it in the mind. And that will cut out the oxygen for the emotion. Every emotion is fuel. The oxygen for an emotion is your thoughts. If you're not thinking about it, then the emotion does not have fuel. It's like a fire. It's like a candle. You have one of those glass, nice scented candles. You want to put it out. You just put the cover on, and you suffocate it, and you choke the oxygen out, and the candle burns out, or the flame extinguishes. It's the same way with an emotion. Every emotion is fueled by oxygen. What is the oxygen of an emotion? It's your thoughts. It's our thoughts. Our thoughts fuel the emotion. Simple, not easy. Simple solution. You want to drop an emotion? Simple solution, think about something else. Think about something positive. You're going to say, but I can't. Okay? That's where training comes in. The mind is a muscle. The brain is a muscle. It's no different than any other muscle. You can't lift something, okay? Maybe not today, but keep on lifting. Keep on increasing the weight, the resistance, and you'll see that you can lift the weight. Give it a month or two and you can lift. Right? Right? So it's like anything. Go to the gym, swimming, cycling, whatever you're doing. Running. You start off, you can't do it. Okay? Keep on trying, keep on going, and you'll build it up. So practice. Now, not in times of crisis. Practice in times of calm. Right? We don't repair a roof when it's raining. You repair a roof when it's not raining. But if it's not raining, why do I need to repair a roof? Aha! For when it rains. That's why you repair a roof when it's sunny outside. Sunny outside, I don't need a roof. But tomorrow you might. So we have to practice mindfulness and mind in controlness when we're not in a negative crisis mode. So we're having a relaxing afternoon. Practice the idea of replacing your current thought with a thought of your choosing. And hold it. Hold that thought for 30 seconds. And then 60 seconds. And then 90 seconds, and then 2 minutes, and then 4 minutes, and 5 minutes. And you'll see that you're able to build up the strength in your own mind to consciously choose what you're going to think about. So when you feel innate sense of guilt about, I can't believe it, I missed that thing, I had an emergency, God forbid, but I missed that thing and I feel so bad about it. You catch yourself, 1 second, I didn't choose that. I didn't intend to do that. It's not my fault. I don't own that. I should not feel guilty about it. I should try to, speak to that person and be nice to them, make it up to them, whatever, but feeling guilt, that's just a ploy of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. It's trying to make me feel bad. I'm going to replace that feeling with a new thought. And the new thought, a pleasant, loving thought, I'll let you choose that. A pleasant, loving thought can flip everything. Will move us away from that guilt. So that's a bit of a long answer to that very important question in the chat. Getting back to our three guilt factors. Factor number 1 is ownership. Ask yourself, do I own this or not? If not, let it go. Question number 2, or factor number 2, is timing. Ask yourself the following question. This is second factor. Ask yourself, is this the right time to feel guilt? Is it productive right now for me to feel guilt? Can I work with this and fix this now, or is this a distraction? So here's the rule of thumb. If it's coming to you, timing is wrong. If you are choosing when to feel guilty about something, then it might be the right time. I'm going to say that again. If your experience of feeling guilt is reactive, likely it's not the right time. If it's proactive, then we're onto something. It's like not all surgeries are scheduled. Sometimes you have an emergency surgery, you have to go in, but nonetheless, holding the scalpel should be at your doing, with your choice. So you're middle of the day. You have a whole list of things that need to get done. Why? Because you're here to make the world a better place, and lots of positive things, lots of light that you still need to bring to the world today. But now you're feeling mitamal, middle of everything. Suddenly you're feeling guilty about something. I can't believe it, I didn't do that. I feel not feeling bad about self, but feeling bad about what you've done. Guilt, not shame. Guilt. So you're not a sociopath. Mazel tov. That's a good thing, right? Good, you're feeling guilt. Problem is, like we said before, you're now going to have that weighing on you, and you're not going to do the next thing because you're going to feel lethargic, you're going to feel heavy, you're going to feel, negative, and that's going to stall your progress. So it's not good. So that's the rule of thumb. If it's coming at you, it's likely not good. If you're choosing when, where, how, now we can have a conversation. Now it might be good. I want to share with you the next quote that speaks to this concept. All right, here we go. This is going to be text number 7. Here we go. This is again from the book of Tanya, chapter 26. Chapter 26 is the guilt chapter. Here we go. Freeing ourselves of negative emotions that result from remorse, guilt over spiritual matters is not a simple task. He speaks about spiritual matters, but it's really the same. Nevertheless, we must seek ways and means to do it. Now, he talks about scenarios of timing. Clearly, while serving God, such as praying or studying Torah, we must rid ourselves of all negative emotion because we must serve God with gladness and a joyous heart. But, and this is really important, even while involved in commerce or other mundane matters, if we experience negative emotions or worry regarding spiritual matters, and as we feel guilt about doing something immoral or whatever, we must know that this is a ploy of the evil inclination. It's a ploy. It's a setup. Its goal is well known, to subsequently lure us into following its lustful desires, God forbid. Were it not so, how does genuine remorse, which is derived from love or fear of God, come to us in the midst of our mundane activities? Are we so holy, he says, that in middle of work we're going to start feeling moral pangs of guilt? Really? Likely that is a ploy of the evil inclination. That's what he says. Let me share with you. I just, when I'm trying to make a a point I just want to see, I want to see you guys. Okay, getting back to the text. Let me share again. Now, regardless of whether the negative emotion happens upon us while we're involved in the service of God, studying and praying, or not, or in the middle of business, we must realize that now is an inappropriate time. I need to highlight this. Inappropriate time for genuine remorse, even over egregious misdeeds, God forbid. In other words, even over something we should feel guilty about, it's not the right time. For genuine remorse, we need designated times, appropriate times, when we have calmness of mind. During those times, we should reflect upon the greatness of God against whom we have sinned, and thereby cause our hearts to be truly broken and genuinely bitter. In other words, yeah, we should feel guilty over things that we've done that aren't so good, or whether it's in our own spiritual relationship with God, or whether it's to someone else in our human relationships. Yeah, we should feel genuine remorse and guilt, but at the right time, when it can be constructive. Elsewhere, it is clarified precisely when this time should be. I'm going to share that with you soon. And there it is also explained that as soon as our hearts have been broken during those designated times, we should completely remove the sorrow from our hearts and believe with a perfect faith that God in His abundant forgiveness has removed our sin. We are then free to experience the true joy in God that comes after the remorse, as mentioned above. Okay, I'm stopping sharing, and let's talk about this using our language. He's talking about the language vis-a-vis our relationship with God pretty much exclusively. I want to bring it to a more broader conversation as we've been discussing today. General guilt over things that we've done, that we've chosen based on step one, that we've chosen and we knew it and we did it, so now we feel bad about it. It is appropriate at the right time. So, don't let the feelings happen or chance upon you and then try to deal with it. That's like catching a flying scalpel. You're probably going to get cut. Rather, you pick it up at the time of your choosing, when you're in the right state of mind and heart to truly feel the problem, recognize the issue, and make positive resolutions to not repeat the negative behavior. That's what we call constructive guilt. Constructive guilt means that it leads to not repeating the same mistake. And when are we most primed to experience constructive guilt? When we're in a state of calmness of mind, when we're not in the middle of stuff that we need to do, we're not in the middle of important stuff, or even mundane spiritual stuff, or even mundane stuff that's also necessary, but when we have the time and the space to do it on our terms in the right way. He said in the text that we just read, we've mentioned elsewhere when the right time is, and I'll tell you what it says in other sources. For most people, the appropriate time for self-reflection and positive resolution taking is at night, before one goes to sleep. So, one's not in the middle of one's spiritual activities, neither is one in the middle of their physical or material activities, necessary activities. It's at night, Letterman is finished. I mean, Letterman is long gone anyway, right? Okay. Sorry, it's an old school reference. Leno, I'm kidding. At this point, I'm kidding. Right? So everything is, and I'm joking about late night TV, right? So you could feel free to turn it off and think about all the stuff, some of the stuff, one thing that we've done that wasn't so right, harmful for yourself or for others or for God. And we think about, we feel the full force of it and resolve, make the resolution. This is what went wrong. With open eyes, I can really assess myself. What led me to do it? Why did I do it? How did it come to be? And let me set myself up in a better place so that I don't repeat it again. That's constructive guilt. Feeling bad about what we've done for the sake of patting ourselves. Look, I'm a person who feels bad about things, so I'm not evil. What's the point? If it's not leading to a positive resolution, what's the point? And if it's the middle of the day, know this. It's a ploy, as we just read. It's a ploy of the Yetzer Hara. Whether it's the middle of davening, praying, or middle of Torah study, or middle of doing a mitzvah, or even in middle of working or eating or anything. It's a ploy to make us feel bad. And that's not kosher. Don't let yourself be made to feel it. to feel bad about something as it comes to you. You choose at your time, at your discretion. Don't push it off. Deal with it, but deal with it on your terms in a healthy fashion. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
So, not fear factor. Guilt factor number one is make sure that you're the right owner. Because if you're not the right owner, just pass along the guilt to whoever does own it. And if no one owns it, then there should not be guilt. So number one, make sure, check in. Are you the right owner? If yes, okay. Then continue to step two. Step two is deal with it at the appropriate time. Step number three, and this is our final step. Step number three is also very important. When we own the problem, and when we find time to deal with the problem internally and really, work it through, the guilt that we feel should be about the wrong that was done and should not be ego-driven, that I feel bad that I did it. It should be all about the subject, the problem. So for example, you ever hear somebody apologize?
Not enough.
Yeah, well, hold on. I didn't finish yet. But yes, I agree with that already. Somebody did something, let's say, God forbid, theoretical scenario. Somebody did something or said something that hurt you. And now they're coming to you to apologize. Has it ever happened that in that apology, all you're hearing is them talk about themselves? You ever have that? The whole apology is about themselves. How they feel bad about what they did, blah, blah, blah. And you're not hearing anything like, hello, I'm the one that you said that not nice thing to. I'm the one that you harmed. Can we talk about me for a second? Because that's the third step of guilt. To make sure that when we are feeling guilty, finally in a healthy way, to make sure that it remains healthy and that we focus on the subject of whom and what we've wronged as opposed to our own self. Because very quickly, guilt can move away from feeling bad for the harm that we've caused to feeling bad that we did something, or that the other person is now looking at us as someone who did something wrong. We can very much make it about our own ego. And that's not healthy guilt. That is not healthy guilt. We have text in our in the PDF vis-a-vis our relationship with God to focus on every time the breach in the relationship as opposed to ourselves. But I'm paraphrasing now, and that's a specific context, and this can be applied in a broad way in all of our relationships and all of the things that we do that maybe aren't in our higher interests or in someone else's higher interests. So what are the three factors? Let's summarize. Number one, make sure that you have a reason to feel guilty in the first place, right? If you didn't do it, don't feel guilty about it. Number one, it's just a distraction, just a negative emotion that needs to be canceled. Number one. Number two, having assessed that, yes, it is your thing, right? Having assessed that, number two, make sure that you're dealing with it at the right time. Don't let it just happen upon you. It chances upon you in the middle of the day. It's not the right time. By the way, if that happens, you tell yourself, yes, very important to deal with this. It's very important to deal with this this guilty, this thing that I did. Very important. But let's set an appointment later on tonight, 9 p.m., we're going to deal with it. 9 p.m., guilt, come back then, we'll deal with it. Not on your terms, on my terms. But then actually deal with it. Think about it, what went wrong, and then when thinking about it, factor number three is make sure the focus is on the wrong that was done and the harm that was done to the other, or the hurt that happened, the problem, in other words, the effect for the other, and not continue to make it about self. The more we make it about self, it's still the same evil inclination, animal soul, stroking its own ego and feeling good about feeling bad. A person could feel good about feeling bad. It's like, I feel bad, I feel good about that because I feel self-righteous about feeling bad. And that's not constructive. That's not constructive. It's ego, right? It's selfish, doesn't help, it doesn't heal the problem, and just keeps us stuck in that self-oriented place. That is what got us into the problem in the first place. So, again, to summarize, 3 factors. Make sure you own it, make sure the timing is right, and make sure that it's about, the guilt is about the right thing and not about yourself. All right, so in the final conclusion, guilt is a sharp instrument. It can cut, and it can cut both ways. It can cut for the negative, it can cut for the positive. It could be destructive, it could be life-saving. The power is in our hands. Now we have some of the tools. So I encourage you to choose wisely. High holidays are coming up. Rosh Hashanah is coming up this weekend. And then 10 days later we have Yom Kippur. It's a time for self-reflection. Remember these ideas. Self-reflection doesn't mean, so I'm not saying gloss over everything, rose-tinted glasses, it's all good, nothing to work on. No. Take the scalpel and look at yourself, right? I'll look at myself. What do we need to improve? What was good? What could be improved? And let's work on it. But stop just general feelings of guilt to tear us down. Sorry to all the rabbis who are into the fire and brimstone guilt speeches, but that's not really the Jewish way. That's not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is to make sure that we're doing it in a constructive way, productive way, healthy way, and not use the scalpel wisely, and not in any negative way. All right, thank you for joining me for the final session of Worrier to Warrior in 5780. See you next year, next Tuesday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Oh, and in case you're wondering, next week, our discussion is about the pain and challenges of life itself. Hardship, challenge, and tragedy that life brings us, how to maintain some semblance, some element of positivity in the space of pain, over things that really are painful. So this is not like shame or guilt. This is negative life experiences. How do we fight the good fight and elevate ourselves to somewhat of to remain somewhat positive even in the face of hardship and challenge and pain and loss, etc. All right, so join us next week for that. Otherwise, I wish you all a Shana Tova U'Mesuka, a very happy and healthy, sweet New Year. I think I'm going to reverse the order. I'm going to call it a healthy and happy New Year, and all the blessings this year should be sweet. You know what sweet means?
Thank you, Rabbi.
And the meaning of that is that sometimes, we can have something that's God forbid painful, but at the end it works out for something beneficial. Not this year. We don't want. We're not blessing each other with that. We want goodness that immediately tastes sweet. It's like, I know what that is. That's good. Tastes sweet. Don't give me any of the sour stuff that later on tastes sweet, or it's the pain, no gain. That's so last year. This year, give us the sweet. Don't give us the sting that then leads to the honey. Give us straight up honey. Give us the stuff that's immediately sweet for us and our loved ones and our friends and our entire community and the entire world and all of humanity. We all need the sweet blessings. Thank you very much. I love you all. Wishing you
Thank you, Rabbi.
inscription and sealing in the book of life. We'll see you all. Take care. Shana Tova.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure.
Bye,
Take care,
Rabbi.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.